Hi, I'm Kristi Simpson and welcome to this episode where we will talk about crochet and knit storage tips. You will learn how to store your yarn and your handmade items in unique ways that you may not have even thought of. So let's just jump on in. Well, we'll start with the yarn storage and talk about why it's important that you store your yarn properly from the very beginning. And it's really important that you do that because if you don't store your yarn properly, then your yarn will start to deteriorate or get bugs in it or just, get tangled, and then your final product that you make from it could possibly be ruined or not last as long. So let's talk about a couple ways that you can store your yarn. The first way is bins, decorative bins. I like to do this because I can hide yarn in my home and nobody ever knows. So you can get these bins anywhere from $5 and up. It's not expensive if you look for them. And you just take and you place the lid on it. But inside you can hide your yarn. And you've got, you can do, even if you wanted to, just your remnants or the rest of your yarn or full skeins that you're working on in a project. Then all you have to do is set it on an end table, put the lid on it, and it's hidden. Another idea is bookcases. I've had bookcases in my closet, in my garage, in yarn, anywhere I store my yarn. And all I do is I put it there just to hide my project yarn that I'm going to be working with, because with books and videos and stuff like that going on, I've got to keep it organized. Another idea is storage units. In my home, I have the little cubicles that you can slide baskets in, and let me show you a basket that I use. So this is one that's in one of my rooms, and it's a 6 unit, and I hide yarn there too. So in one of those bins is more yarn. So what I have here is yarn that I may be working on for one project or another project. And really, if you have projects you're working on or not, if you just like to buy yarn and collect it, or you say, I'm going to use that yarn, you need to have a nice place to store it. And this is only for inside, not for a garage, because if you're in a garage, you need to have a sealed top, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So you can use bins also with open tops inside. Now, one other thing that I would like to talk to you about storing your yarn would possibly be vacuum bags. Now, I have vacuum bags that store my yarn, and I have vacuum bags that store my made items because I need to put them in the garage out of my way. And I'll show you that in just a few minutes, but that's one thing that you might want to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to handmade items, that is a totally different way you need to store them, because you need to make sure bugs don't get in them, and you need to make sure that they don't deteriorate or get, soggy or moist or anything like that. So let's move on to talking about your handmade item storage. When it comes to taking care of your handmade items, you need to make sure that you launder them properly. You do not need to take and just throw them in the washing machine. If you do that, for one, they can come unraveled because they're just getting jostled around really rough. And so you need to look at the care on the yarn for one. Like if you're working with something that has wool in it, make sure you hand wash it on the proper cool settings. Now, I take back the washing machine thing. I do throw my blankets in there because they do get just so heavy, and usually I can trust that they're not going to get tore up if I do it on delicate. But if you're working on an item or something you're giving as a gift or something you need to block, make sure you hand wash them with the appropriate detergent. There are detergents that you can use with wools and detergents you can use with other materials. Just make sure that you're not using just straight laundry detergent, because sometimes that can strip the colors, that can ruin the yarn also. So just pay attention to what the labels say about how you need to launder that. Okay, so how do you take care of it? So what you need to do is get it wet, and you can rub it together gently underneath the water or let it soak if you're able to do that. And so I have a wet shawl here, and what I'm going to do is take it and lay it on a towel. And you don't need to wring it out, because if you do that, what does it do? It stresses the fibers. It takes it and pulls it out of proportion, and you don't want to do that on something you just finished. So what you do is you put it on a towel and just roll it. And what that does is it adds a little bit of pressure to it, and it helps take it out without wringing it or throwing it in the dryer, which will ruin most of your items. So once you do that, you'll just let it dry or soak up most of the moisture. Once it finishes soaking out most of the moisture, you can take it out and lay it flat to dry. Do not hang it up. Like if you use a hanger or little clips, what's it going to do? It's going to pull and it's going to sag, and it's going to add little pull points here, which you don't want. So just lay it flat to dry. Now, let's talk about storage of your handmade items. When it comes to storing your handmade items, there's a couple of things you need to consider. Are you storing them for short term or long term? And what things do you have to store them in? Let's start off talking about vacuum bags. I know I talked about it just a little bit ago, but let me show you what I mean. I have made a lot of items throughout the year that I like to give as Christmas gifts, and they end up taking a lot of room out of my house. So to get them out of my house, I want to put them in my garage. And to put them in a garage, you need to make sure you have a sealed container. So this is one way that my wonderful husband came up with. He's like, why don't we use a vacuum bag? And then you can suction it down, and then you actually have more room. So I put everything in here, from hats to scarves to sweaters, shawls, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's going to be squished. You're going to take and you're going to zip the top. And usually they'll give you a little tool that does it for you. Just take and run it across the top. Okay, so when it's sealed, there's this little button-like thing here that you're going to take your vacuum cleaner and just stick it here, and it's going to flatten this back. I mean, it's going to take it here and it's going to make it really small. And you can take it out and put it in your garage or shed or wherever you want to. So that's one option. You can also do that with yarn if you want to, like I said before. Now another option would be to use, say, a cedar chest. Make sure it seals really good. You can put heirloom blankets or any item that you would like to keep for a while. Just try to wrap up your item in, say, tissue paper so that it doesn't touch the cedar chest directly, because cedar the smell may come off on it, and you just don't want to worry about ruining or altering that item. Another option would be acid-free cardboard boxes. Make sure it's acid-free. And something that you might want to consider putting in there would be a jar that has a metal lid that you can puncture holes in. So what you'll do is take a hammer and nail, take and puncture holes in the top here. And I've already done that with a hammer, so I'm not Wonder Woman just punching holes in here with my hand. And then you can put mothballs. You can put dried herbs such as lavender and sage, or even cedar shavings in here, and set it in the box, and that will help repel bugs. You got to make sure that it's sealed really tightly, because it doesn't always repel spiders, so just make sure your container is always sealed. One thing that you can also do is take like a sachet and put a cloth with essential oils in it. Cedarwood, clove, rosemary, lavender, or sage would be a good idea, so you can use those. Now, those are just a few ways that you could store them. You know, so we've talked about yarn storage and why it's important. You've got to take care of the yarn so that whenever you make the item has a better chance of longevity. Then we've talked about storing our items. So what happens when you want to give a gift? Can you tell the people how to store it? Yes, you can, and it's very, very easy. You can say you've made a scarf, really pretty scarf, and then you can take a tag and write the instructions on it so that you're passing along how to take care of those. And what you can also do, a fun little tip, is take some of the extra yarn that you used to make the item and wrap it up in a little ball here. Do it really fast. See, it doesn't take long. And then that way, if they do a little ball here, and that way if they ever get a hole in it or a snag, you can take and add it to your label that you tie onto the item, and they can fix it, or they can bring it back to you and you've already taken care of the repair. So that's one other way that you can store away, help there, and give gifts and help them take care of their item as well. So in review, to wrap up, we talked about how to store your yarn in your home, how to store your handmade items after you launder them correctly, and we've talked about how to give gifts and make sure we teach them how to take care of them as well. So you're all ready to go with your yarn and your handmade item storage. So until next time, happy crocheting.